The day we buried my husband, my own children sat in our kitchen and decided I wasn't worth keeping. I heard them through the door. My oldest son said the words plain as Sunday. Mom's got nothing left. Dad burned through everything on that damn shop. My daughter agreed, and then they decided what to do with the youngest, my Wade, the boy they called a disappointment. He doesn't get a share. I was 75 years old. I had just put 52 years of marriage into the ground that morning. And before the casseroles in the kitchen had even gone cold, my own flesh and blood were carving me up like an estate sale. So I made a choice. Right there, standing in that hallway with an empty glass in my hand. The kitchen still smelled like funeral coffee and lily flowers. I would start forgetting things. Small things at first. A name. A date. The stove left on. I'd let them watch me disappear, one forgotten name at a time. I'd let them believe the woman who raised them was already gone. And I would learn once and for all what blood actually meant. What I didn't know, standing in that hallway, was that my husband had left a secret buried under the concrete floor of his workshop. And the only person who knew where it was buried was the son I'd spent 30 years calling a disappointment. My name is Evelyn Carter. I taught third grade at Millbrook Elementary for 30 years. From 1971 to 2001, 843 children passed through my classroom. I remember most of their names. I remember which ones cried at the spelling bee. I remember which ones brought their grandmother to parent-teacher night because their mother was sick. I am not a woman who forgets things, but that's exactly why my plan would work. Because in Millbrook, Kansas population 1,200, sitting flat and stubborn on the western plains, everybody knew Evelyn Carter. Everybody knew I was the sharp one, the one who corrected the pastor's grammar from the third pew, the one who balanced the church budget for 14 years without a single mistake. So if Evelyn Carter started forgetting things, people would believe it, especially my own children. The service was at Millbrook Methodist, same church Harold and I were married in, same church we baptized all 3 kids in, same church I'd been singing in the choir at since 1969. October, the kind of cold rain that comes after a 3-year drought. Farmers around here called it late rain, the wrong kind, the kind that comes when the soil is already cracked and won't drink it back. I stood next to the casket in a black dress I'd worn 22 years before, to Harold's mother's funeral. The elbows were worn through. I didn't care. Harold Carter, born 1945, died 2023, 78 years old, heart attack. He went down in his shop with a 14-millimeter wrench still in his hand. The person who found him was Wade, our youngest. The undertaker had to peel the wrench out of his fingers. I wasn't told that part until later. The kids stood in a row beside me. Dwight first, 52 years old, Brooks Brothers suit, hair slicked back like he was about to close a deal. He runs a real estate brokerage out of Wichita, Carter Realty Group. He'd been telling everyone who came through the receiving line that his father was a tremendous man. He had practiced that line in the mirror that morning. I knew because his bathroom door had been open and I'd walked past it. A tremendous man. Like Harold was a quarterly earnings report. Then Marlene, 48, Banana Republic black, sunglasses on, inside the church. She works as an office manager at a dental practice in Topeka, married to Brad who didn't come. Brad had a work thing, she said. Brad always had a work thing. She was crying, real tears. I'll give her that. But every 4 or 5 minutes she pulled out her phone, checked something, tapped something, put it back. She'd posted to Facebook at 9 that morning, a black and white photo of Harold from 1978, a caption about an angel in heaven. Hundreds of likes by the time the service started. Hundreds of strangers telling my daughter how strong she was. And then there was Wade, 45 years old, not in the church. Wade was outside in the rain, fixing the front gate of Millbrook Methodist. The hinge had snapped the week before. The trustees had been arguing about who would pay to fix it. Nobody asked Wade to fix it. He just saw it was broken. He was wearing the same flannel shirt he'd worn since he was 30, same jeans, same boots, hands streaked with grease and rain. I watched him through the stained glass window above the altar, watched his shoulders curve over that gate, watched him work like the world wasn't ending, like his father wasn't lying in a wooden box 20 feet from where he stood. I thought, there he goes, same as always, won't even come inside. I didn't know. I didn't know that was the first time in 12 years Wade had set foot on church property, the first time since he'd come back to Millbrook from Tulsa in the winter of 2017, drunk, broke, asking his father for one more chance. His father had said no, and then his father had been dead 12 years too late to say yes. The service ended. The rain didn't. People came back to the house, our house, the 2-story white farmhouse Harold built with his own hands in 1978. He'd cut every joist himself, set every window, painted the porch swing the color of a Kansas morning. The church ladies brought food. They always do. Tuna casserole, fried chicken from the Methodist cookbook, potato salad with too much mustard, a green bean dish nobody touched. I sat in the front room. People came up to me. They said the things people say. He was such a good man, Evelyn. You let us know if you need anything. He's with the Lord now. I nodded. I smiled. I said thank you. Harold would have appreciated that. I said it 63 times that afternoon. I counted. After about an hour, my throat was dry. I stood up to get a glass of water from the kitchen. That's when I heard them. The kitchen door was open about 3 inches. Dwight was on one side of the kitchen island. Marlene was on the other. Coffee cups in their hands, talking low, not quite whispering. The way grown children talk when they think their mother is too distracted by grief to be listening. I stopped in the hallway. I didn't mean to, but then I heard the word money, so I stayed. Linda, listen, we need to talk straight. He used Marlene's middle name when he was being serious. Linda Marlene. She'd always hated Linda. Mom named her that after our grandmother. Mom doesn't have much left. Are you sure? I checked the joint account last week. Dad drained it. You know how he was. That shop. Those rusted tractors. He burned through everything. So what do we do? A pause. I could hear him sipping his coffee. Sell the house. Fast. It'll bring $220, maybe $240 with a new kitchen. Put Mom in assisted living. We split what's left. Clean. What about Wade? A laugh. Short. Dry. Not cruel exactly. Just done. Wade? You want to give a third to the drunk who hasn't paid his way in 20 years? Linda. He's been eating off this family his whole life. He doesn't get a share. A long silence. Then Marlene said it. Yeah, you're right. I stood in the hallway. My right hand was still holding the empty glass. My left hand had found the wall. Not because I needed to steady myself, because if I let go of the wall, I was going to walk into that kitchen and smash the glass across my oldest son's face. I breathed. 1 breath. 2. I turned around. I walked back into the front room. I smiled at Mrs. Henderson, who was waiting to give me her condolences. He was such a good man, Evelyn. Thank you. Harold would have appreciated that. 64 times. After everyone had gone. After the church ladies had washed the dishes and stacked the casserole pans on the counter, I went upstairs. Dwight and Marlene were sleeping in the front room downstairs. They were leaving in the morning, back to Wichita, back to Topeka, back to their lives. Wade had left at 6. He hadn't come in. He'd just leaned the repaired gate against the side of the church and driven home in that beat-up Ford pickup. I climbed the stairs slowly. The 3rd step still creaked. Harold had been meaning to fix it since 1986. I went into our bedroom. For the first time in 52 years, I would sleep alone in that bed. I didn't cry. I'd already cried 3 nights before. Alone. When nobody was looking. That's when I'd done my crying. I lay on my back. I stared at the ceiling. The same water stain Harold had been promising to paint over since the spring of 2009. And I thought about what Dwight had said. He doesn't get a share. I thought about Wade, the Thanksgiving of 2017, the last time he'd sat at our table for a family meal. He'd come back from Tulsa. He was drunk. He'd been drunk for a long time. He'd asked his father for help. I had stood up in front of everyone. Dwight, Marlene, the grandkids, Harold's sister, and I had called my own son the disappointment of my life. I had used those exact words. The disappointment of my life. He had set down his fork. He had stood up. He had walked out of the house. He had not come back to my table again. Not once in 6 years. I had told myself it was his fault. I had told myself I was justified. I thought about Harold, about the shop, about all that money that had supposedly burned through. Harold Carter did not burn through money. Harold Carter saved mason jars of nickels in the basement. Harold Carter wore the same pair of work boots for 9 years and resold them 3 times. Harold Carter once drove 40 miles to Hutchinson to find a transmission part because it cost $6 less than the one in town. Harold Carter did not burn through anything. So where had it gone? I lay there in the dark, and I made my decision. If my 2 oldest children were already ready to bury their mother next to their father, I would give them their chance. I would die slowly, right in front of them, one day at a time, one forgotten name at a time, and I would learn what blood meant. I rolled over. I closed my eyes. I didn't know. I didn't know that 12 miles east, in a single wide trailer beside an old machine shop, my youngest son was sitting on his back step in the cold October rain, boots off, hands on his knees, crying, for the first time in 6 years, crying because he didn't know how to talk to me, crying because he didn't know how to talk to anyone, crying because his father had died with a wrench in his hand and Wade Carter, the disappointment, had been the only one there to find him. I slept that night. I don't know how, but I slept, and in the morning, I started forgetting things. I made coffee at 5 a.m., the same as every morning for 52 years. I stood at the kitchen sink. I looked out the window, past the porch, past the yard. 200 yards out, sitting square in the field behind the house, was Harold's shop. The door was padlocked. Wade had the key. I didn't ask him for it. I opened the bottom drawer of the kitchen cabinet. I pulled out a notebook, the kind I used to write lesson plans in. Red spiral, college ruled. The cover said property of Mrs. Carter, room 14, Millbrook Elementary. I sat at the kitchen table. I started writing. Step 1, research. Step 2, practice. Step 3, symptoms. Step 4, witnesses. Step 5, patience. That afternoon, I drove the Buick into town. The Buick was a 2004 LeSabre, maroon. Harold had bought it used in 2009 from Earl Henderson's brother-in-law. It had 140,000 miles on it and a rattle in the dashboard that nobody could find. I parked in front of the Millbrook Public Library, the same library where I'd taken Dwight to Story Hour in 1973, the same library where Marlene had won the summer reading contest 3 years running. The same library Wade had been kicked out of in 1991 for setting off a stink bomb in the children's section. The librarian was a woman named Frances Muller. She'd taken over from Mrs. Peterson in 2015. She was about my age. We'd taught Sunday school together in the 80s. Evelyn, honey, I am so sorry about Harold. Thank you, Frances. How are you holding up? I'm managing. She watched me, the way old friends watch each other, looking for the crack. What can I help you find today? I had practiced this part. In the car, in the mirror at home. I looked at her. I held her gaze a beat too long. Then I said, I'd like to learn about, the memory illness, the forgetting one. I let my voice trail off. I let my eyes drift to the side. I let her fill in the blank. Oh, Evelyn, honey. She came around the desk. She put her hand on my arm. Are you having symptoms? I said very softly, I don't know. I left the library with 4 books. The 3-6, Our Day, Living with Dementia, Surviving Alzheimer's, The Forgetting. I also left with something else. By supper time, the entire town of Millbrook would know that Evelyn Carter had come to the library asking about memory loss. And by Tuesday, that information would reach my children. Because Frances Mueller's daughter was married to a man whose sister cleaned house for Dwight's ex-wife. Small towns. That was the point. I read for 3 days. I made notes in the margins, I underlined things, I dog-eared pages. I learned that early stage dementia is not what most people think. It isn't constant fog, it isn't drooling, it isn't forgetting your own name. Early stage is subtle. Word-finding pauses, misplaced objects, repeated questions 8 to 15 minutes apart, confusion about dates, mixing up the names of family members, sometimes calling a child by a sibling's name, sometimes calling a son by your husband's name. I learned that early stage patients almost always retain old skills: cooking, driving familiar routes, playing the piano. The motor memory stays even when the words leave. This was important because if I stopped cooking, my children would know something was wrong. But if I cooked the same beef stew I'd been making since 1972 and called my son by his father's name halfway through dinner, that would be perfect. I practiced in the mirror. This is the part nobody ever talks about, the part that takes work. You can't just go around acting confused. Real dementia has texture. It has a quality. The eyes drift, but they drift in a specific way. The hands move, but they move with a different kind of hesitation, not a young person's hesitation, an older hesitation, the kind that doesn't quite know what it was reaching for. I stood in front of the bathroom mirror. I said, "What day is it?" I made my face do the thing. It wasn't right. I tried again. I let my brow furrow halfway. I let my mouth open. I let my eyes find a spot somewhere over my own shoulder. "What day is it?" Better. I tried again. "What day is it?" I practiced for 2 hours. By the end, I could do it in 3 seconds flat. Question, furrow, drift, pause, recover halfway, apologize. I was a teacher for 30 years. I knew how to perform. I practiced misplacing things. This was harder than it sounds. You can't just put your keys in the refrigerator. That's the cliche. That's what everybody puts in the movies. If I did that, Dwight would smell it from Wichita. I needed something stranger, something quieter. I put my reading glasses inside the box of laundry detergent, not on top, inside. Then I closed the box, and I put the box back on the shelf. 3 days later, when I needed my glasses, I would forget where they were. I would search. I would search visibly. And then eventually, when I was doing laundry, I would find them in the detergent box. I would say, "Oh, that's funny. How did those get there?" I would laugh, and whoever was watching would not laugh. I practiced the hand tremor too. A real 75-year-old has a tremor sometimes, especially after the death of a spouse, especially in grief. Grief tremor is a real thing. Doctors recognize it. I practiced making my teacup rattle slightly against the saucer, not enough to spill, just enough to be noticed. There was one more thing I had to do, the hardest one. I sat at the kitchen table. I opened the leather address book Harold had given me for Christmas in 1985, the same one I'd been using ever since. I found the number for Dr. Darrell Patterson. He had been our family doctor for 30 years. He had delivered Marlene. He had set Wade's broken wrist twice. He had been the one who told Harold 6 years ago that his heart was failing. I picked up the phone. He answered on the second ring. "Patterson. Darrell. It's Evelyn." A breath. Then his voice softened. "Evelyn, I've been meaning to call you. After the service, I didn't know what to say. I need a favor. Anything. And I need you to keep a secret. The way you kept Harold's for 6 years. A long silence on the other end. Then, you know about that. I found his pill bottles last week in the bedroom drawer. Statins, beta blockers, prescriptions dated 2017. He never told me. Evelyn, I am so sorry. He made me promise. He said you had enough on your plate. He said, Darrell, I'm not angry. Harold always had reasons. He always had reasons for everything, but now I need your help." I told him I wanted a letter, an informal diagnosis, possible early-stage cognitive decline, recommend monitoring, avoid major decisions until further evaluation, something my children could see. if they came looking. Something with his letterhead, something with his signature. He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "Evelyn, are you sure about this?" "I'm sure. If Harold was alive, would he support this?" I looked out the kitchen window, the shop, the cracked October ground. The gate at the church wade had fixed in the rain. I said, "I think he would say." "You do what you think is right, Evie. I'm behind you." Darrell Patterson exhaled into the phone. "I'll write the letter. But Evelyn, if this goes too far, if something feels wrong, you call me. Promise me." "I promise." I called Dwight. He picked up on the fourth ring. He sounded distracted. He was probably driving. "Mom, hey, everything okay?" I had practiced this too. I said, "Dwight, I called to. I was calling because..." I let it hang. I let the silence stretch. I let myself sound small. "I'm sorry, honey. What was I calling about?" A pause on his end. Then his voice changed. The way a man's voice changes when he hears opportunity. "Mom, are you okay?" "I'm fine. I'm fine. I've just been forgetting things. Since your father, I haven't been sleeping well. Mom, you should see a doctor. Don't bother Darrell. He has enough patience." No. I'll call him myself. Tomorrow." "Okay, sweetheart, if you want to." I hung up. I sat at the kitchen table. I looked at my reflection in the dark window. I smiled. The bait was set. 2 weeks after the funeral, Dwight drove out from Wichita in his Lexus. Marlena came too. They had been on the phone with Darrell Patterson. He'd told them exactly what I'd asked him to say. Possible early-stage cognitive decline, recommend family support, no formal diagnosis yet. It was enough. They drove out together. They told each other it was to check on me, but they had a folder in the back seat. I knew because Marlene let me carry her purse to the guest room and the folder was sticking out the top. It said Sunset Pines Memory Care on the front. They'd already toured it before they came to see if their mother was actually sick. I greeted them at the door. I was wearing the same blue sweater I always wore, but I had buttoned it wrong. One button off. The collar sat crooked on my shoulder. It took every ounce of discipline not to fix it when I looked in the hall mirror. Marlene hugged me. Hard. Theatrical. "Mama. Oh, Mama. I've been so worried." "I'm fine, sweetheart." Dwight kissed my forehead. "Mom, we're going to take care of you." I looked up at him. I made my eyes do the thing. I said, "Dwight? Are you Harold? Why is your hair wet?" Dwight froze. His eyes flicked to Marlene. Marlene covered her mouth. I watched them through my drift. Neither of them corrected me. Neither of them said, "Mom, I'm Dwight. Dad died." They just exchanged a look. The look said, "It's worse than we thought." I made beef stew for dinner. The same recipe I'd been making since 1972. The one Harold loved. The one I could make in my sleep. Carrots, potatoes, onion, a bay leaf, salt, a splash of Worcestershire at the end. I did not mess it up. That was important. A real early-stage patient would not mess up the recipe. The hands remember. But halfway through dinner, while we were sitting at the table where I had fed those two children every night for 18 years, I turned to Dwight. I said, "So, are you married, dear?" Dwight had been divorced 4 years. He had 2 children, Tyler, 15, Madison, 12. I had babysat both of them every summer of their lives until the divorce. Dwight set his spoon down, slowly. "Mom, I'm divorced. I have Tyler and Madison. Do you remember Tyler and Madison?" I let my eyes go far. "Tyler, Madison. Yes, of course. I'm sorry. I just got confused for a second." I looked down at my stew. I let my hand shake slightly on the spoon. Across the table, Marlene reached for her phone. She held it under the lip of the table. She was filming me. She was filming me eating, filming me forgetting. I caught it in the reflection of the dark kitchen window behind her head. I did not let her see I saw. I just kept eating my stew. I thought, who is that for, Marlene? Who do you need to show? I would not learn the answer for another 5 weeks. The answer was her lawyer, a man named Philip Reyes, a Topeka attorney with statewide practice in elder competency cases. She was building a case to have me declared unfit, to take control before I could sell the house, before I could change my will, before I could do anything she or her brother might not like. My daughter, building a case against her own mother, while I served her beef stew. That night, after they had gone to bed, Marlene called her husband Brad in Topeka. I know because the guest room phone clicked on at 10:47. I picked up the kitchen extension. I covered the mouthpiece. I am not proud of that, but I listened. Brad said 3 sentences. Marlene, she didn't recognize Tyler. We can't risk it. Get the lawyer moving. Marlene was quiet a long time. Then she said, okay. Then she said, Brad, she's still my mother. Brad said, she used to be. The call ended. I set the phone down. I sat at the kitchen table in the dark. I understood something then. Marlene was not the cruelest person in that marriage. She was the weakest. She had married a man who would tell her 3 sentences, and she would believe them. The way she had believed her brother in the kitchen the day of the funeral. She had always needed someone to tell her what to think. I had not taught her how to think for herself. That was on me. I did not cry. I just sat there. The 3rd stair creaked at 3 a.m. I knew that creak. I had heard it for 52 years. Sometimes Harold coming up after working late in the shop. Sometimes Wade sneaking out at 16. Sometimes Dwight sneaking back in at 17, smelling of beer. Tonight it was Dwight again. He went down the hall. He opened the door to Harold's study. I heard the desk drawer slide open. I heard papers shuffle. He was looking for the will. He was looking for bank statements. He was looking for whatever was left. I lay in the dark. I did not move. I did not cry. I just thought, keep looking, son. You won't find what isn't there. What was there was a yellow envelope in the bottom right drawer. He missed it. He missed it because it was paperclipped to the back of a 1,987 IRS return. Because Harold had hidden it where Harold always hid the things that mattered. Underneath something boring. The next morning they came at me together. Both of them. At the kitchen table. With coffee. With their gentle voices on. Dwight first. Mom, we've been talking. We're worried. I'm fine, sweetheart. Mom, you're not fine. You called me Harold last night. You forgot Tyler and Madison. You buttoned your sweater wrong this morning. I looked down at my sweater. I had buttoned it wrong again. On purpose. I let my face crumple a little. Did I? Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't notice. Marlene leaned in. Mama, there's a beautiful place. Near Wichita, Sunset Pines. They have nurses, 24 hours. They have activities. You'd have friends, Mama. You wouldn't be alone. Dwight, just for a few months, Mom. While Daryl adjusts your medications, then you come home. Just for a few months. While Daryl adjusts your medications. The first real lie. I had no medications. Daryl Patterson had given me no prescriptions. There was nothing to adjust. Dwight knew that, but he said it anyway, with his soft voice, with his hand over mine on the kitchen table. I nodded slowly. I made my eyes wet. I said, what about the house? Dwight, don't you worry about the house, Mom. I'll handle everything. You just sign a power of attorney. I'll manage things while you're getting better. He pulled a folder out of his briefcase. He had brought a folder with paperwork already drawn up, already typed, already prepared by a lawyer in Wichita, before he had even seen me, before he had even confirmed I was sick. He had brought the papers. I took the pen. My hand trembled. I made it tremble. But underneath the trembling, my brain was working in straight, clean lines, because I had planned for this. I had planned for this moment 2 weeks ago, sitting at this exact table. I signed Evelyn Carter, but I did not sign it the way I sign anything. I signed it sloppy, too big, too loopy, the E wrong, the C unfinished. It was not my signature. It was the signature of a confused old woman who could no longer write her own name, which meant one day, in a courtroom, in front of a judge, I could prove it had been signed under duress, under coercion, under conditions that did not meet the legal standard for informed consent. I had a folder upstairs, a folder with 23 samples of my real signature, from bank documents, from my driver's license, from birthday cards I had sent to my grandchildren. All of them showed the same clean school teacher's Evelyn Carter. The signature on the power of attorney did not match. Not one of them. I handed Dwight the pen back. He smiled. He had no idea. That was when there was a knock at the door. It was Wade. He was standing on the porch. He was holding a small wooden box in his hands. His flannel sleeves were rolled up. His knuckles were scabbed from working on something. His hair was wet from the morning fog. He said, "Mom, I brought this for you. I found it in the shop. It belongs to you." The box was the size of a Bible. Smooth pine, dovetailed corners, Harold's work. Inside it, Harold's reading glasses, the Timex watch he had worn every day since 1974, and a black and white photograph of me at 24, on my wedding day, laughing at something Harold had just said. I held the box. I felt something crack in my chest, but I had to stay in the part. I looked up at Wade. I made my eyes drift. I said, "Thank you. Who are you?" Wade's face did not change. He said very quietly, "I'm Wade, Mom. I'm your son." Dwight stepped in front of him. "Wade, Mom's not well. She's going to Sunset Pines today. We've handled it." Wade looked at Dwight. He looked at Marlene. He looked at me. He said, "Who decided?" "Dwight, me and Marlene." "You got an opinion, brother?" A long silence. Wade said, "Yeah, I do, but I know you don't want to hear it, so I'll just ask one thing. Give me the phone number of Sunset Pines." Marlene wrote it on a slip of paper. Wade took it. He looked at me one more time. He nodded once. He turned around. He walked back to his truck. I heard the engine start. I heard the gravel under the tires. I watched him go. I held the wooden box in my lap. I held it like it was the only thing in the world that still belonged to me. That afternoon, Dwight drove me to Sunset Pines. The Lexus was warm. The leather seats were heated. He played NPR. I looked out the window. Wheat fields, stubble, brown grass, a red-tailed hawk on a fence post. I thought about the wooden box. I had hidden it in the bottom of my suitcase, under 3 nightgowns and a flannel robe. I thought about Wade. I thought about his question, who decided? And for the first time since the funeral, a small thought slipped past my defenses. A thought so small I almost didn't notice it. The thought was, what if I was wrong about him? What if I have been wrong about him for 30 years? I pushed the thought away. It was too heavy to hold. I would have to come back to it. But not today. Today, I had a part to play. We pulled into the parking lot at 4:30 in the afternoon. Gray building, 2 stories, a concrete walkway, a flag on a pole. Dwight parked. He came around to my door. He helped me out. He carried my suitcase. I held the wooden box against my chest. He didn't ask what was in it. He didn't ask anything. He just walked me through the automatic doors and handed me off to a woman in scrubs and drove back to Wichita. He did not call that night to see how I had settled in. He did not call the next night either. He did not call for 6 weeks. The room had 2 beds. Mine was by the window. The other belonged to a woman named Doris Hendricks, 82 years old, Alzheimer's, middle stage. She could no longer finish a sentence. She could no longer remember her husband's name. She wore an adult diaper and a nightgown the color of weak tea. She had been at Sunset Pines for 4 years. Her son lived in Denver. Her son had not visited in 2. I sat on the edge of the bed. The mattress was thin. The sheets smelled like industrial bleach. The pillow was the size of a folded dish towel. I looked out the window. The window faced the parking lot. No trees, no birds, just asphalt, and a dumpster, and a chain-link fence around an air conditioning unit. I started counting. It's what teachers do. Number of nurse visits per day, 4. Morning meds, vitals at 11, lunch tray check, evening meds, and adult brief change for Doris. Number of meals per day, 3, 7, 12, 5. Number of activities offered, 2. Bingo Tuesday, hymn sing Friday. Number of phone calls from Dwight in week 1, 0. Number of phone calls from Marlene in week 1, 3 minutes long. Mama, are you eating? I'm so busy right now, I'll call you back tomorrow. She did not call back. Number of phone calls from Wade. I did not know. I did not know because Wade did not call. Wade did something else. Wade drove. He drove 90 minutes each way, every Sunday afternoon. 2 o'clock. He came in through the front doors. He signed the visitor log. He sat in the waiting room with his hands on his knees. He waited 45 minutes. Then he gave the nurse an apple, and he left. He did this for 3 Sundays before I knew he was doing it, because I had told the nurses to tell him I was sleeping. Her name was Brenda Mosley. She was the evening shift nurse, 50 years old, black, from Kansas City originally. She had been working at Sunset Pines for 12 years. She had 3 grown daughters and 1 grandson and a husband who drove a city bus. She did not talk to me the way most of the staff talked to me. She did not call me honey or sweetheart or use the high voice people use on children. She called me Mrs. Carter. She looked me in the eye. She remembered which side of the bed I liked the lamp on. It was the second week, Tuesday evening. I was sitting in the chair by the window, reading a paperback I had brought from home. The Pickwick Papers. I had been reading it for 40 years and had never finished. Brenda came in with my evening pills. She set the little paper cup on the tray table. She looked at me. She said, Mrs. Carter, someone came for you again this afternoon. That's 3 now. I looked up. Who? Your son, Mr. Wade. 3 Sundays in a row, 2 o'clock sharp. I held the book very still in my lap. I said, how long does he stay? 45 minutes. Every time. He sits in the lobby. He doesn't read. He doesn't look at his phone. He just sits. And then he gives me this, and he asks me to give it to you if you wake up. She set something on the bedside table. A Honey Crisp apple. Red, polished, just washed. He brings one every week. He says you used to tell him you liked Honey Crisps. I stared at the apple. I did not remember ever telling Wade what kind of apple I liked. I did not remember Wade ever asking. Brenda sat down on the empty bed across from me. She folded her hands. She said, Mrs. Carter, I'm going to say something. You can tell me to mind my own business if you want. Go ahead. I don't know what happened between you and that man. I'm not asking. But I've worked this floor for 12 years. I've seen a lot of grown children come through these doors. There are 3 kinds. She held up her fingers. There's the ones who come because they have to. Out of duty. They check the box. They leave. There's the ones who come because they feel guilty. They stay longer. They cry in the parking lot. They tell themselves they're being good children. She lowered her hand. And then there's the ones who come because they want to be there, because there's nowhere else they'd rather be. She looked at me. Mrs. Carter, your son Wade. He's the 3rd kind. I've been doing this long enough to know. She stood up. She straightened the sheets on Doris's bed. She walked to the door. Before she left, she turned back. She said, he never asks me to wake you up. He just asks if you're comfortable, and if you've eaten, and if you have warm socks. The door closed. I sat in the chair. I looked at the apple. I did not eat it, because if I ate it, I would have to admit I was hungry for something more than food. I let it sit on the table. I let it shine in the light from the parking lot lamp outside. I let it become the thing I looked at when I could not sleep. Every Sunday after that, I heard the truck. You could hear it from the window if you listened. The old F-150. Diesel. A specific rumble. I would hear it pull into the lot at 1:55. The door would open. The door would close. The boots would cross the lobby. And every Sunday, I would tell Brenda the same thing. Tell him I'm sleeping. She would nod. She would not argue. She would leave the room. She would come back 45 minutes later with a clean apple. Why did I do it? I have asked myself this question many times since. I think the answer is I was afraid. I was afraid that if I saw him, I would crack. I was afraid that if I looked into his face, that face that was Harold's face, I would forget that I was pretending. I would forget the plan. I would tell him everything. But there was something underneath the fear, something uglier, something I am ashamed of even now. I still did not trust him. A small voice in the back of my head, a voice that had been there since 1991 when he was 16 and crashed his father's truck into a fence post, kept saying, "He's coming because he knows you have something. He's coming because he wants something." The others were just less subtle. I knew this voice was a lie. I knew it the moment Brenda told me he brought an apple every week. But knowing a thing is a lie does not make it stop talking. That is the part of being old nobody tells you. The wrong voices in your head do not get quieter. You just learn to live with them. The fourth week, Dwight came. He came once, 15 minutes. He brought a leather briefcase. He did not bring an apple. He came in. He kissed my forehead. He sat down across from me. He said, "Mom, how are you feeling?" I made my eyes drift. "I'm fine, sweetheart. Are they treating you well?" I looked at the wall. There's a woman in the next bed. She cries at night. He didn't ask about Doris. He opened the briefcase. He pulled out papers. "Mom, I need you to sign something. It's just so I can manage things while you're getting better. We need to sell the house to cover your care here. Sunset Pines isn't cheap, and your Social Security alone won't sell the house." I let it slip into my voice. The smallest crack. Just enough. "It's temporary, Mom. I'll handle it. Just sign." I looked at the papers. It was not a real estate listing agreement. It was not a simple authorization to sell the family home. It was a full power of attorney, comprehensive, over every asset, every account, every piece of real property, including the shop, including the 5 acres Harold had deeded to Wade in 2010. It would have given Dwight the legal authority to sell Wade's land out from under him. It would have given him the authority to sell the shop. It would have given him the authority to sell anything Harold had ever bought. Everything. I picked up the pen. My hand trembled. I made it tremble. I started to sign. Then I stopped. I looked up at Dwight. I said, "Honey, the shop. I want to leave the shop to someone." He frowned. "To who, Mom?" I let my eyes go vague. "To the one who, the man who fixes the tractors," your father always said. "The man who fixes the—" I let it trail. I let my mouth hang open a second too long. I let my hand shake harder. Dwight sighed, loud, through his nose. "Mom, don't make this complicated, just sign." I signed. I signed it sloppy again. A signature my own bank would not have honored if it had come through on a check. He took the papers. He stood up. He kissed my forehead. He said, "I love you, Mom." And he walked out. 15 minutes. He drove back to Wichita. That night, he filed the power of attorney with the county. He listed the house for sale with a broker named John Beasley. He set the asking price at $235. He did not tell me. He did not have to. He had the power of attorney. He could do whatever he wanted. Brenda was at the door when Dwight left. She watched him go. She came in. She sat down on the edge of the empty bed. She did not say anything for a long time. Then she said, "Mrs. Carter, that man brought you papers. He did not bring you a sweater. It's getting cold." She got up. She left the room. I sat there with the wooden box on my lap. I lifted Harold's Timex out of the box. I wound it. I put it on my wrist. It was too big. It slid down to my knuckles. But the ticking was loud. It was the loudest sound in the room. The 5th week, Marlene came. She brought grocery store chrysanthemums, the cheap kind from the Walmart in Augusta, wrapped in plastic, $3 stickers still on the wrapper. She brought them to me. She put them in a plastic cup full of tap water. She kissed my cheek. She took 3 pictures. She posted before she left the parking lot. I would see the post later, through Brenda's phone. Brenda showed me without comment. It was a picture of Marlene's hand holding my hand on the bedspread. Soft focus. Aesthetic. The caption was about dementia being a thief. The caption asked everyone to hug their parents tonight. She stayed in my room for 22 minutes. She did not ask if Doris had a daughter who visited. On her way back to Topeka, she made a call. The call was to Philip Reyes. The call lasted 46 minutes. By the end of it, she had authorized him to file a petition for guardianship. She had authorized her own lawyer to ask a Kansas judge to declare her own mother legally incompetent. I did not know any of that yet. I sat in my chair. I watched the parking lot. I listened to Doris breathe in the other bed. I felt Harold's watch ticking against the bone of my wrist. It was the 6th week. November now. The kind of November where the wind cuts sideways across the parking lot and rattles the glass. It was a Tuesday night. Doris had been crying since dinner. She was not crying about anything. She was just crying, the way she did sometimes, a long, thin, keening sound that went on and on. I sat in my chair. I held the wooden box in my lap. I lifted out Harold's watch again. I wound it. I put it back on my wrist. I thought, I cannot stay here. I thought, if I die, I am not going to die in this room. I thought, if I die, I am going to die in my own house. In the bed Harold built me in 1978. I opened the bottom drawer of the nightstand. $47 in cash. I had been saving it from the spending money the nurses sometimes gave me for the vending machine. I had not spent any of it. I had been saving it for this. I stood up. I took off the hospital socks. I put on my own socks. I put on my own shoes. I put on the denim jacket. The denim jacket had belonged to Harold. It had grease stains on the elbows. Brenda had smuggled it in for me 3 weeks ago. She had taken it out of my closet at home and brought it past the front desk inside a plastic shopping bag. She had not asked why I wanted it. That is what kind of woman Brenda Mosley was. I looked at Doris in the other bed. She had stopped crying. She was asleep now. Her hand was on her chest. Her mouth was open. I walked over. I pulled the blanket up to her chin. I tucked it under her shoulders, the way I had tucked in my own children, the way nobody had tucked in Doris in 4 years. I bent down. I whispered, "Goodbye, Doris." She did not stir. I picked up the wooden box. I picked up the $47. I walked to the door of the room. I looked back once. I turned out the light. I walked down the hall. I knew which door was unlocked. I had been watching for 6 weeks. It was the side door by the staff break room, the one where the night shift smokers went out for their cigarettes. The latch did not catch from 11 at night until 6 in the morning, every single night. 5 different nurses, 2 different shifts. None of them ever checked. Sunset Pines was a memory care facility, but the side door was a code violation nobody had bothered to fix. The state inspector would not catch it for another 2 months. I had counted. I walked down the hall in my own shoes. I pushed the door open. It was 3 a.m. The Kansas night was clear and hard and cold. The temperature was 24 degrees Fahrenheit. The wind was coming straight out of the north. I stepped outside. The door closed behind me. I started walking. The Greyhound station was 1 3/4 miles west. I knew because I had asked a candy striper named Heather, casually 2 weeks before, "Honey, how far is it from here to the bus station?" My grandson asked me and I couldn't remember. Heather had said, "About 1.5 miles, Mrs. Carter, just down Main past the Walmart." I had filed it away. I walked. I kept to the side of the road. The wind cut through Harold's denim jacket like the jacket was not there. A pickup truck passed me. The driver did not slow down. A police cruiser passed me, going the other way. The officer did not look. I was just an old woman in a coat walking on the shoulder of a Kansas road in the middle of the night. In Kansas. In November. People mind their own business. I passed the Walmart. It was 24 hours. The parking lot lights were the brightest thing for 1 mile in any direction. There was a man asleep on a bench by the entrance. He had a blanket. He had a plastic bag. He had a paper cup beside him. I stopped. I do not know why I stopped. I took a $5 bill out of my pocket. I put it under the paper cup so the wind would not take it. He did not wake up. I kept walking. I would think about him later. I think about him still. I do not know why I gave him the $5. Maybe it was because he was a stranger and I was about to become one. Maybe it was because somebody on this earth needed to know what cold was tonight and it would not just be me. I do not know. I kept walking. I reached the Greyhound station at 4:30. It was a single room, concrete block, a vending machine, a heater on the wall that rattled and ticked, 4 plastic chairs. The first bus to Millbrook was at 6:15. The ticket cost $18.40. I had $37 left. I bought the ticket from a machine. I sat down in a plastic chair. There was one other person in the station, a woman, late 50s, Native American features, a heavy canvas bag in her lap. She was traveling somewhere. We did not speak. We nodded to each other. That was all. We sat in that warm, rattling little room and we waited for the world to start moving again. At Sunset Pines, the morning shift nurse walked into my room at 5:15. The bed was empty. The wooden box was gone. The denim jacket was gone. She checked the bathroom. She checked Doris's side. She checked the bathroom again. She walked very fast to the nurse's station. She picked up the phone. At 6 a.m., the facility supervisor called Dwight. Dwight was getting ready for a meeting. A big meeting. A development deal. 16 units in a planned community east of Wichita. A $2.5 million deal. He had been working on it for 9 months. He saw the unknown number on his screen. He let it go to voicemail. He turned his phone face down on the counter. He poured his coffee. At 6:15, the supervisor called Marlene. Marlene was asleep. She heard the voicemail at 6:50. She listened to the first 10 seconds. Mrs. Carter is not in her room. We have searched the facility. It appears she may have left the public desk. She put the phone down. She thought, Mama is wandering the halls. They'll find her. She rolled over. She went back to sleep. At 6:30, the supervisor called the third number on the emergency contact list. Wade Carter. Wade had been awake since 4. He was in the shop. He was working on Earl Henderson's John Deere 4020. The starter solenoid had finally given up. He had grease on his hands. He had the shop heater going. Boomer was asleep on a pile of rags under the workbench. Wade brought Boomer with him to the shop every morning. The old dog liked the warm smell of diesel. The phone rang. He looked at it. He saw it was Sunset Pines. He set down the wrench. He picked up Carter. Mr. Carter, your mother is not in her room. We've searched the facility. It appears she may have left the premises during the night. Wade went very still. He did not ask how. He did not ask why she had not been monitored. He did not ask whose fault it was. He asked one question. What was she wearing? A denim jacket. Her own shoes. She had a small wooden box with her. How much money? We don't know. Not much. Maybe $40 or $50 from her commissary account. Wade looked at the clock on the shop wall. 6:34. He said, I'm on my way. He hung up. He did not call Dwight. He did not call Marlene. He turned off the shop heater. He wiped his hands on a rag. He put on his coat. He looked at Boomer. You stay, old man. I'll be back. Boomer thumped his tail twice. Wade got in the F-150. He started driving. He did not drive toward Sunset Pines. He drove the other way. He drove toward Millbrook, toward the bus station, because Wade had asked himself the question that Dwight and Marlene had not bothered to ask. The question was, where would she go? And the answer was, home. She did not have a car. She had not driven in 7 months. She had $40 in cash, give or take. There was a Greyhound from Augusta to Millbrook every morning at 6:15. It arrived in Millbrook at 7:45. Wade looked at the clock in the truck. 6:47. He had 58 minutes. He pressed harder on the gas. The bus pulled into Millbrook at 7:43. It hissed to a stop in front of the old depot. The depot was not a depot anymore. It was a coffee shop now. Plains Roast Coffee, open 6 to 2, closed Sundays. The bus just stopped in front of the awning because it had always stopped there. The driver opened the doors. 3 people got off. A teenager. a man in a Carhartt jacket, and me. I came down the steps slowly. I was tired. I was so tired. I had not slept in 26 hours. The cold had gotten into my bones somewhere around 5 a.m. and was still there. I had Harold's wooden box clutched against my chest. I had Harold's denim jacket pulled tight. I had no plan past get home. Home was a mile and a half away. I could walk it. I had walked it 1,000 times in my life. I could walk it once more. I looked up. There was a man on the sidewalk. He was standing very still. His hands were in the pockets of an old brown Carhartt coat. He was not waving. He was not calling out. He was not running toward me. He was just standing there, waiting, the way you wait for someone you love when you do not want to scare them. It was Wade. I started toward him. My feet did not move right. I had been sitting too long in the bus. I shuffled. He did not come to meet me. He let me come to him. I think now he knew. I think he knew I needed those steps. I needed to walk to him on my own. I needed to choose to. I reached him. I stopped in front of him. I opened my mouth. I was going to say, "Who are you?" I was going to stay in character. But I was so tired. I was so cold. I had been pretending for 6 weeks, and I could not do it for one more second. I just said, "I'm cold." That was all I had left. "I'm cold." Wade did not say anything. He took off his coat. He wrapped it around my shoulders. He took the wooden box out of my arms. He held it for me. He put his other hand under my elbow. He walked me to the truck. The truck was warm. The heater was on full blast. He had been waiting in it with the engine running. He had been ready. He helped me up into the seat. He buckled the seatbelt across me. The seatbelt was stiff and old. The latch did not catch on the first try. He tried it again. It clicked. He shut the door. He walked around to the driver's side. He got in. He did not say anything for a full minute. Then he said, "Mom, my trailer is not fancy, but it has a furnace, and it has coffee." I did not answer. He put the truck in gear. He pulled away from the curb. The cab smelled like diesel, and like the leather of an old work seat, and like the wintergreen mints Harold used to keep in the cup holder. I closed my eyes. I felt my feet start to tingle as they thawed. I felt the warmth come up through my legs. I thought, I should keep pretending. I thought, he cannot see me crack. I tried to make my voice old and confused. I said, "Where are you taking me?" Wade did not look at me. He looked at the road. He said, "To my house, Mom. I'm your son. We're going home." 5 minutes later, I said, "What is your name again?" He said, "Wade." 10 minutes later, I said, "Where are we going?" He said, "Home, Mom. To my house. It's almost there." He said it every time the same way. No frustration, no pity, just the truth, repeated as many times as I needed to hear it. I watched him from the corner of my eye. His hands on the wheel were big. They were scarred. Across the back of his right hand was a long, thin, white line. I had not let myself look at that scar in 29 years. He had gotten it at 16. A lawn mower blade. Harold had driven him to the emergency room in Hutchinson at 2 a.m. I had stayed home with Marlene because Marlene had had a fever. I had not gone with my son to the hospital. That had been one of the choices that became the wall between us. I had told myself it was because of Marlene. It had been 30 years, and I had told myself it was because of Marlene. But sitting in that truck, watching that scar, I admitted to myself for the first time. I had not gone because I had been angry at him. He had been mowing in the dark. He had been mowing in the dark because he had been drinking. He had been drinking at 16, and I had been angry. I had been angry at 16-year-old Wade for being a 16-year-old who was already drinking. Harold had taken him. Harold had sat with him in that emergency room until 4:30 in the morning. Harold had not yelled at him on the way home. I had yelled at him the next day. I had yelled at him for hours. I had not let it go for a year. It was the first time I had called him a disappointment. He had been 16. He had been bleeding, and I had been the one who could not let it go. I looked at his hands on the wheel. I looked at his face. He had Harold's nose. He had Harold's jaw. He had Harold's silence. I had been married to Harold Carter for 52 years, and I had not really seen that he had built a second version of himself and parked it 12 miles away in a trailer, and I had been calling that second version a disappointment for 30 years. I closed my eyes. I did not cry. I just rode in the warm cab with my son back to a house I had never been in. We pulled off the highway onto a dirt road, then off the dirt road onto a gravel drive, then up a slight rise. There was the shop, Harold's shop, tin-roofed, square-built, same as I remembered it. Behind the shop, set back 50 yards into the field, was a single-wide trailer, white and pale green, a wooden porch Wade had built himself, a propane tank on the side, a small fenced yard. Wade pulled into the gravel turnaround. He cut the engine. "Boomer's in the shop, Mom. I'll bring him over after we get you inside." He got out. He came around. He opened my door. I got down carefully. He opened the trailer door. He said, "Come on, Mom. The kettle's on." He held the door for me. I walked up the wooden porch steps. I went inside. The trailer was 600 square feet. 1 bedroom, 1 bathroom, a living room and a kitchen sharing 1 space. It was clean. That surprised me more than anything else. The floor was old laminate. There were 2 scuffs near the door from boots. The couch was a brown thing from the 90s, covered with a flannel blanket folded neatly across the back. There was a small electric stove that looked like it still worked. There was a coffee pot that was new. There was a bookshelf. There was a bookshelf. I had not known Wade had a bookshelf. I walked toward it without meaning to. Cormac McCarthy, Blood Meridian, The Crossing, a repair manual for John Deere 2-cylinder engines, a repair manual for diesel injection systems, a King James Bible with the cover cracking at the spine, a copy of East of Eden, a paperback of Plain Song by Kent Haruf. He had been reading Kent Haruf. My son had been reading Kent Haruf in a trailer 12 miles from my kitchen, and I had not known. Wade came in behind me. He set the wooden box on the table. He said, "Mom, the bedroom is yours. I changed the sheets this morning. Well, I changed them 3 weeks ago. They've been waiting." I turned around. I looked at him. "They've been waiting?" He shrugged. He did not meet my eyes. He said, "I didn't know when, but I figured one day, maybe." He walked to the bedroom door. The bed was made. Clean sheets. A patchwork quilt. A glass of water already set on the nightstand. The lamp turned low. He had prepared this room. He had prepared it a long time ago. I walked in. I sat down on the edge of the bed. I looked at him standing in the doorway. I tried to say something. I tried to say thank you. I tried to say I'm sorry. I tried to say I have been wrong about you for 30 years, and I do not know how to fix it. What came out of my mouth was, "Where's Boomer?" Wade said, "I'll bring him over. He'll be glad to see you." He started to close the door. He stopped. He said, "I'll be on the couch. If you need me, just call. I'll hear you." He closed the door. I lay down. I pulled the quilt up to my chin. The sheets smelled like soap. The sheets smelled like they had been put on the bed weeks ago and aired by an open window. I closed my eyes. For the first time in 6 weeks, I slept. For the first time since the funeral, I slept all the way through to morning. I woke at 7 a.m. The trailer was warm. I could smell coffee and bacon and something else toast. I lay in the bed for a long time. I did not move. I did not get up. I just listened. There was no sound in the trailer. He had already gone out to the shop. He had gone out at 5, the way Harold had always gone out at 5. On the kitchen table, there was a plate, 2 slices of bacon, 1 fried egg, a piece of toast, covered with foil to keep it warm, a coffee mug, half full, sitting on a wooden coaster. The mug was on a heated pad. The pad was glowing red. Next to the plate, a folded note, block printed in pencil. "Mom, eat. I'll be back at noon. Boomer is in the house with you. My number is 620-555-0184 if you need anything. Wade. His handwriting. I had not seen his handwriting in 12 years. It was Harold's handwriting. Same block letters. Same forward slant. Same way of crossing the T with a short downward dash. I sat down at the table. I held the note in my hand. I thought about the 6 weeks I had spent at Sunset Pines. 6 weeks, 42 days. Not one note. Not one phone call from Dwight. 3 phone calls from Marlene. None over 4 minutes. 0 notes. 0 notes from anybody. I had been raised in the school of a generation that did not believe in self-pity, but sitting at that kitchen table in my son's trailer with a note on the table that he had written in pencil before he went out to work in the cold, I felt something I had not let myself feel. I felt cared for by someone who did not know if I would ever say thank you. I ate the bacon. I ate the egg. I drank the coffee. It was strong, too strong, the way Harold drank it. I ate every bite. He came back at 12. He came in with grease on his hands. He went straight to the sink. He washed up to his elbows with dish soap. He dried on a clean towel that was hanging where Harold would have hung a clean towel. He set a plastic Dollar General bag on the counter. He said, "Mom, I got groceries. I didn't know what you wanted, so I just got the basics. Milk, bread, oranges, some soup. The librarian gave me this for you." He reached into the bag. He pulled out a hardcover book, Where the Crawdads Sing. I looked at it. He said, "She said you like long books with secrets in them." I told her I didn't know what to get, so I asked her to pick. He set it on the table. He did not wait for me to thank him. He went back to the sink and washed his hands again. I picked up the book. The library sticker said it had been checked out 23 times before me. It had a wrinkled spine. I held it for a long time. I thought, he went into the library. He went to a woman he did not know. He asked her for a book for me. He drove home with it. He set it on the table without ceremony. He did not need me to be grateful. I said, "Thank you, Wade." He looked up from drying his hands. He nodded once. He said, "Welcome, Mom." That was all. He did not push it. In the afternoon, I walked out to the shop. The wind was sharp, but the sun was bright. The shop door was open. I stepped inside. It smelled like Harold's shop had always smelled. Old grease, cold steel, tractor diesel. A trace of cigar smoke, even though Harold had been dead 2 months, the smoke was in the wood. Earl Henderson was sitting on an overturned bucket near the John Deere. Earl was 78 years old. He had farmed the section just south of ours for 51 years. He had been one of Harold's first customers in 1972. He stood up when I came in. He took his hat off. "Evelyn, I heard you were back." "Hello, Earl." He looked at his hat. He turned it in his hands. He did not know what to say. He said, "I'm sorry about Harold." "I know you are." He nodded. He sat back down on the bucket. Wade was under the tractor. I sat down on a wooden chair in the corner. I watched. Wade was talking to Earl while he worked. Without looking up, "Earl, I told you, cash isn't a problem. We can settle later." "Wade, I brought you 5 dozen eggs and a jar of honey. That ain't enough, and I know it. It's enough. Hold the rest. I don't need it. This is the 3rd time you've fixed this tractor for me this year. It's a 1,965 tractor, Earl. It's going to keep breaking. That's not your fault. My dad fixed this same tractor for you starting in 1985. He didn't charge you full price either. Your dad was a good man." Wade did not answer that. He just kept turning the wrench. I watched him work. I watched the way his hands moved. I watched the patience. I watched the silence. And I thought about how for 30 years I had told myself my son was a failure. I thought about how, in the same 30 years, my son had been quietly fixing tractors for an old man who could not pay him. I taught children for 30 years. I taught them to grow up to be kind. I told them every year, be kind, be kind, be kind. And I did not notice that the kindest one was the one I gave birth to. It was the 4th day. Wade had hung his coat on the hook by the door. A small spiral notebook fell out of the pocket. It slid across the floor. He did not see it. He was outside, splitting wood. I picked it up. I should have put it back. I did not put it back. I opened it. The first page, the 14th of November 2017, Atchison Trust Bank, gambling debt and overdue credit cards, $18,400. Goal, pay off in 7 years. Deck 2017, paid $200. Jan 2018, paid $250. It went on like that, line by line, month by month, for 6 years. September 2023, $1,200 left. Almost there. The 5th of October 2023, 4 days before Harold died. Paid in full. Dad will never know I did this. That's okay. I sat down at the kitchen table. I held the little notebook in my hand. My hand was shaking. It was not pretend shaking this time. I thought about Thanksgiving 2017. I thought about what I had called him in front of everyone. I thought about how he had walked out. What I had not known was that 2 weeks later, he had walked into a bank and signed a payment plan. 2 weeks after I had called him the disappointment of my life, he had decided to fix the only thing he could fix. And he had paid $18,000 in 6 years on a tractor mechanic's wages. He had told no one. He had told no one because he had not believed anyone would care. I closed the notebook. I put it back in his coat pocket exactly the way I had found it. I did not tell him I had seen it. Not that night. It was the 8th day. Sunday morning. The phone on the counter rang. Wade was outside. I looked at the screen. Dwight. I let it ring. It went to voicemail. The screen lit up again immediately. Dwight. He let it ring. It went to voicemail. Wade came in. He saw the phone. He picked it up. He read the screen. He hit call back. He put it on speaker. I did not ask him to. He just did. He wanted me to hear. Dwight picked up on the first ring. Wade, you son of a bitch, where is she? She's here. You can't just take her, Wade. I have power of attorney. I have legal. You have financial power of attorney, Dwight. You don't have custody. Mom isn't a child. She left Sunset Pines on her own. She walked out the side door at 3 a.m. I picked her up at the bus station. She's an adult. She can stay where she wants. Wade, you are not qualified to take care of her. Neither were you. She lost 5 pounds in 6 weeks at Sunset Pines, Dwight. I weighed her last night. You weighed her. I weighed her. Because nobody at Sunset Pines did. Silence on the line. Then Dwight said, I'm calling my lawyer. Wade said, good. I already called mine. You don't have a lawyer. I do, Dwight. Her name is Margaret Kowalski. Main Street, Millbrook. She has been Dad's lawyer since 1979. She has the original power of attorney Dad signed in favor of Mom in 2018, which supersedes anything you got Mom to sign in October. So no, you don't have power over her assets. You never did. Wade hung up. He set the phone on the counter. He looked at me. He said, sorry, Mom. I should have asked before I said all that. I shook my head. I said, Wade, how long have you had a lawyer? He looked away. He shrugged. He said, since the day after Dad's funeral. I knew Dwight would start moving. I wanted to be ready. I stared at him. He said, it cost me $400 for the consultation. I had it saved up. I sat down on the couch. I had spent 30 years believing my youngest son could not plan ahead. He had spent 6 weeks planning everything. While I had been pretending, he had been preparing. It was the 11th day. Boomer had been moving slow all afternoon. Wade had been watching him. I had been watching Wade watch him. At 10 o'clock, Boomer threw up on the floor by the couch. Wade was on the floor with him in a second. He felt Boomer's belly. He looked up at me. He said, Mom, I have to take him to the emergency vet. Get your coat. We drove 35 minutes to Hutchinson, to the only 24-hour vet clinic in 3 counties. Wade carried Boomer in. He filled out the paperwork without looking up. We sat in the waiting room. He did not say anything. He just held the leash in his lap. The vet came out after 40 minutes. Pancreatitis, we caught it in time, 2 nights here on IV fluids. He'll be all right. $740. Wade pulled out his wallet. He did not ask if there was a payment plan. He did not look at me. He just handed over his card. On the drive home, he did not speak for the first 10 miles. Then he said not really to me, more to himself. He's Dad's last dog. I wasn't going to let him die tonight. I looked at him. I thought about Harold, about Wade. 2 men, the same, both quiet, both did things instead of saying things. I had been married to one of them for 52 years, and I had not noticed the second one. It was the 14th day, 2 weeks. I had not pretended to forget anything for 10 of them. Wade had not asked me to stop pretending. Wade had not asked me anything. He had let me decide when, but I had not told him. I had not said, Wade, I know you know. I know you knew from the first night. From the way I sorted your father's wrenches on the kitchen table, I had not said it because I did not have the words. School teachers always have words. I had taught children to find words for everything. But I had spent 30 years building a wall against my own son, and there was no lesson plan for taking it down. That night, Wade came home late. 7 o'clock. He had been at a farm 20 miles north, fixing a baler before the snow came. His hands were stiff from cold. I had made supper. Beef stew. The same beef stew I had made for Dwight and Marlene the night before they put me in Sunset Pines. It was the first time in 12 years I had cooked for Wade. I had been afraid to. I had been afraid he would not eat it. I had been afraid I would offer him something and he would refuse. But I had made it anyway. He washed his hands. He sat down at the table. He took a bite. He said, Mom, this is good. I nodded. He took another bite. He reached for his glass of water. His hand bumped the small butter dish on the table. The butter dish was a chipped ceramic thing he had bought at an estate sale. The butter dish went over the edge of the table. It hit the laminate floor. It broke. 3 pieces. A small splatter of soft butter on the wood. And before my mind could stop my mouth, before the school teacher in me could find the right word, the kind word, the "it's fine, sweetheart," the old voice spoke. The voice that had been speaking to Wade since he was 16 years old. The voice that had called him a disappointment at Thanksgiving 2017. I said, "You can't do anything right, can you?" The kitchen went very still. Wade did not move. He held his spoon halfway to his mouth. He set the spoon down. He picked up his napkin. He folded it carefully. Once, twice. He set it on the table. He bent down. He started picking up the pieces of the butter dish. His back was to me. He said quietly, with no shake in his voice at all, "Yeah, Mom, I know. You've been telling me that for 30 years. He stood up. He walked over to the trash can. He dropped the 3 pieces in. The pieces clattered. He came back. He picked up the napkin. He wiped the butter off the floor. He threw the napkin away. He walked to the closet. He took his coat off the hook. He put it on. He picked up his keys. He said, "I'm going out to the shop. Eat your supper. Leave the dishes in the sink. I'll do them when I get back." He opened the door. He went outside. The door closed. I heard the F-150 start. I heard the gravel. I heard him drive the 50 yards to the shop. I heard the truck door slam. Then there was nothing. I sat at the table. The stew was still steaming in the bowls. My bowl. His bowl. Both untouched. I sat there. I did not move. I had done it. I had done it again. For 30 years. For 30 years I had been doing it. And the part of me that had told myself I had changed the part of me that had ridden in his truck from the bus station, that had slept under his roof, that had eaten food he had bought me, that had been carried back from the brink by a man I had called a disappointment my entire life. That part of me had cracked. The minute he dropped a butter dish, the same way I had cracked when he was 16 and bleeding, the same way I had cracked at Thanksgiving 2017, the same woman. I had not changed at all. I leaned over. I picked up a piece of the butter dish that he had missed. It had slid under the table, a small triangle. Sharp edge. I held it. The edge cut into the pad of my thumb. A drop of blood welled up. I watched it. It fell onto the laminate floor, a single red dot beside the smear of butter. I started to cry. I had not cried since the night of the funeral. 6 weeks. I had held it all in for 6 weeks. And one broken plate broke me. I cried for a long time. Boomer came over. He put his chin on my knee. He looked up at me with his cloudy old eyes. He did not understand, but he stayed. After a while, I stood up. I cleaned the floor. I cleaned the cut on my thumb. I put a bandage on it from the drawer beside the sink. Wade had a whole drawer full of bandages. Of course he did. He was a man who worked with his hands. I put on Harold's denim jacket. I walked outside. It was full dark now. The shop light was on, a square of yellow against the black field. I crossed the gravel. I opened the shop door. Wade was sitting on a wooden stool by the workbench. He was not working on anything. He was just sitting. There was a small black and white photograph in his hand. I could see it from across the shop. It was a photograph from 1995. Wade had been 17. He and Harold had been standing next to an engine block they had just rebuilt for an old Massey Ferguson. Wade was grinning. Harold had a hand on his shoulder. Both of their faces were smeared with grease. He was holding the photograph in his fingers. He was not looking at it. He was looking at the wall. I stood in the doorway. I said, "Wade." He did not turn around. He said, "Go back inside, Mom. It's cold." I said, "Wade, I'm sorry." He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "Don't be sorry, Mom. You weren't lying. I can't do anything right. I never could." I walked into the shop. I walked toward him. I stopped about 4 feet behind him. I said, "That isn't true." He did not answer. I said it again. "That isn't true, Wade." He set the photograph down on the workbench. He turned around on the stool. He looked at me. His eyes were wet. He was not crying, but his eyes were wet. He said, "Mom, I didn't go to college. I was a drunk for 12 years. I'm divorced. I live in a trailer. I fix old men's tractors for eggs. When Dad died, I had nothing to give you. Dwight has a Lexus. Marlene has a husband. I have a trailer and a dog. You weren't lying." I took one more step toward him. I said, "You paid off $18,000 in 6 years, by yourself." His face changed. He said, "How do you know that?" "I saw your ledger, the little notebook in your coat pocket. Last week, it fell out when you hung the coat. I read it. I shouldn't have, but I did." He did not speak. I said, "You finished paying that debt 4 days before your father died. You wrote in your book that he would never know, that it was okay. It was okay. Wade." He knew. He looked at me. What? He knew. He knew everything. "I am going to show you something tomorrow. Your father left papers. He left a letter. I have not opened it yet. I was waiting, but I think it is time." Wade was very still. He said, "What kind of papers, Mom?" "I don't know yet. They are in the shop. Your father told you where they are. He told you 6 years ago." Wade's hand went to his neck, to the chain, to the small brass key he had been wearing for 6 years. He said, "Mom, how did you know about that?" I sat down on the wooden chair across from him, the same chair I had sat in 2 days ago, watching him work on Earl's tractor. I said, "Because the first night I was in your trailer, I sorted your father's wrenches on the kitchen table, the way he taught both of us, by size, by type, by order of use. You watched me do it. You said nothing, but your face changed. That was when I knew you knew I was pretending, and I knew you knew about the safe, because your father did not give that key to Dwight. He did not give it to Marlene. He gave it to the one of us who would know what to do with it." Wade pulled the chain off over his head. He held it in his palm. The small brass key glinted. He said, "He told me, the night he threw me out, he said, 'Wade, if anything happens to me, you bring this to your mother, not to Dwight, not to Marlene, to your mother, and you give her the key.'" I thought it was a test. I thought if I survived without him, he would give me back the right to come home. He never did. He died. I thought maybe he died still angry with me. He held out the key. He said, "I never opened it, Mom. I never even looked. He gave it to me 6 years ago, and I have worn it every day, and I have never opened it." I took the key. It was warm from his skin. I held it in my palm. I closed my fingers over it. I said, "Wade, he was not still angry with you. I promise you. I cannot prove it yet, but I will by tomorrow morning." He nodded. He wiped his face with the back of his hand. He laughed once, a small broken laugh. He said, "Mom, you knew I knew you were pretending the whole time." I said, "I knew." "How?" "Because your father looked at people the same way you look at people. He saw everything and said nothing. You sorted his wrenches the way he taught you when you were 6. People who are losing their mind don't remember things like that." Wade nodded slowly. "I knew the first hour you were in my truck." "How?" "Because nobody who is actually losing their mind says I'm cold with that much grammar." I laughed. I had not expected to laugh. I laughed, and then I cried at the same time. It was the first time I had laughed in 8 weeks. We walked back to the trailer together. Boomer met us at the door. Wade made fresh coffee. We sat at the kitchen table where the butter dish had broken. The pieces were already in the trash. The smear of butter was already gone. The drop of my blood was already wiped away. He had not seen me clean it up. I had not told him I had. It was just 2 old people, 145, 175, sitting in a single-wide trailer in November in Kansas, drinking coffee. He said, "What now, Mom?" I said, "Tomorrow, first thing, we go to the shop, we open the safe, and then I decide what to do about your brother and sister. They have been busy while I was at Sunset Pines. Your sister has filed something with a lawyer in Topeka. Your brother has listed the house for sale." "How do you know that?" "Margaret Kowalski called me yesterday, while you were in town. She has been tracking it." Wade smiled. "Just a little." He said, "Mom, you have a lawyer too." I said, "I have had one since the morning after Harold's funeral. Margaret has been my lawyer for as long as she has been your father's, 44 years. Wade put his head down on the table. He laughed, quietly, into his arm. He said, "Mom, we are going to be a problem for those 2. I said, "Yes, Wade, we are." Morning. Cold and clear. Wade led me into the shop, past the 4 tractors he kept inside, past the workbench to the far southeast corner. He pulled aside a heavy rubber mat, 4 feet by 4 feet, the kind mechanics stand on to spare their knees. Underneath, concrete floor. He pointed. If you looked closely, there was a square seam, painted the color of the concrete, almost invisible. He took a heavy industrial magnet off the workbench shelf. He placed it in the center of the square. He pulled up. A metal plate lifted out. The plate had a thin skim of concrete-colored coating on top, just enough to fool the eye. Below the plate was a recess. In the recess was a safe, fire-resistant, 40 centimeters square, steel. Wade said, "He showed me this once. In 2017, the week before he threw me out, he said, 'Wade, remember where this is. One day your mother will need to know.'" I knelt on the cold concrete. I took the key Wade had carried for 6 years. I put it in the lock. It turned. I lifted the lid. Inside were 4 things. The first was a thick folder of papers. The cover sheet said, "Stafford County Register of Deeds, quitclaim deeds and water rights certificates." I opened it. I read, from 2009 to 2022, Harold had bought 9 parcels of farmland in the western part of Stafford County, 340 acres total. None of the parcels were big on their own. He had bought them slowly, over 14 years, one at a time, when the prices were low. Each parcel came with attached irrigation water rights, senior rights, with priority dates predating the modern restrictions on the Ogallala Aquifer. I am a school teacher, not a water lawyer, but I had read enough that morning in books I had checked out from Francis Muller the week before the funeral to know what senior rights meant. It meant, in a drought year, When the wells were going dry, the senior rights got watered first. The junior rights had to wait. And we were in the third drought year in a row. The second item in the safe was a hand-drawn map of all 9 parcels, Harold's handwriting, with notes: Parcel 3 and 7 wells producing well, good output. Parcel 5 needs new pump. The third item was a stack of old bank statements. Going back to 2009, every monthly transfer Harold had made from the joint account into a separate account labeled H. Carter Farm Holdings. The transfers were small, 300 here, 500 there, never enough for me to notice. Over 14 years, they had added up to enough to buy 9 parcels of cheap, drought-stricken land. The fourth item was a brown envelope. On the front, in Harold's writing, for Evie, "Open when you are ready." I picked up the envelope. My hands were steady. Wade was kneeling beside me. I said, "I am going to read this alone, Wade. Tonight, after supper. I want you to know that, so that you know if I am quiet tomorrow, it is because of this, not because of you." He nodded. He said, "Take your time, Mom. Whatever it says, it does not change today." I put the envelope in the pocket of Harold's denim jacket. We closed the safe. We locked it. We put the key on a fresh chain around my neck. Wade insisted. We covered it back over. The plate, the mat. We walked back to the trailer. I read it that night, after Wade was asleep on the couch, after Boomer was asleep on the floor, after the trailer was quiet, and the kerosene heater had clicked itself down low. I sat at the kitchen table under the small light. I unfolded the letter. 2 pages. Harold's block letter handwriting. The same letters that had been on Wade's note that morning. It said, "Evie, I am writing this in June 2023. Daryl says my heart will not make it through another summer. I do not know when you will read this. Maybe next week, maybe next year, maybe never. But I have to write it down. I was wrong about Wade. In November of 2017, he came to the shop one night. He was drunk. He was crying. He said, 'Dad, I was wrong. Please forgive me.' I had been angry at him for 4 years. Because he had hurt you, because he had made you cry in the kitchen, I thought, if I forgive him, he will hurt you again. So I told him no. I told him he could not come home until he could stand on his own 2 feet. I did not tell him I loved him. I did not tell you I had done it. I was a stupid old man, Evie. I hid everything. I thought hiding was a kind of love." He stood up. I watched him from the office window. 2 weeks later, he walked into Atchison Trust Bank and signed a payment plan for $18,000. He paid $200 a month for 6 years. I watched the bank account through the window of Daryl's office. Daryl had a contact at the bank. He told me every month. Every month, Evie. For 6 years. I watched him quit drinking. I watched him fix tractors for Earl Henderson for eggs. I watched him take Boomer when my heart got too bad to drive out to the shop in the cold. I thought about calling him 100 times. In December 2022, I did call him. He did not answer. He was at Earl's. He was fixing the manifold. I did not call back. I thought, let him come back when he is ready. He never came back because he thought I was still angry. He never came back because I never told him I was not. This is my fault, Evie, not his, mine. If you are reading this, it means you went into the shop. It means Wade brought you. It means after I was gone, our son was the one who stayed. The papers in this safe are not for you to be rich. You don't need to be rich. You never did. The papers are for you to do the right thing, the thing I did not have the courage to do while I was alive. Give Wade the bigger share. Not because he is the poorest, because he is the only one of our children I ever pushed away, and he is the only one who came back without being called. Daryl knows about the heart, nobody knows about the land. A secret is a kind of love. I learned that too late. I love you, Evie. I love all 3 of them. But I love Wade in the hardest way, the way a father loves a son he hurt and did not know how to fix. You do what you think is right. I'm behind you. Harold. P.S. Boomer likes peanut butter cookies. Not too many. He gets fat. I did not cry. I had already cried. In the shop, the night of the butter dish. I had used up my crying. I folded the letter. I put it back in the brown envelope. I sat at the kitchen table for a long time. I watched the light from the heater glow. I watched Boomer sleep. I listened to Wade breathing on the couch. I thought about Harold. I thought about how he had spent 6 years watching our youngest son fix himself and had never picked up the phone. I was angry at him for a while. Then I was not. Then I just loved him. The way you love a man who tried his whole life and did not get the last part right. In the morning, I told Wade what the letter said. I told him all of it, word for word. I read it to him out loud at the kitchen table while he held his coffee cup with both hands. When I was done, he was quiet. He said, "Mom, I knew." I said, "You knew what?" That Dad called me. December 2022. I saw the missed call. I called him back 2 hours later. He didn't pick up. I figured he didn't want to talk. I figured he'd called by accident. He called you on purpose, Wade. Wade put his cup down. He said, "I know, Mom. I know that now." He looked out the window. He said, "I was at Earl's that day. I was under the combine, cold, greasy. My hands were too dirty to touch the phone. By the time I got home, it was late. I called back. He didn't answer. I thought, okay, maybe tomorrow. I thought there would be a tomorrow. There wasn't. He did not cry. He just sat at the kitchen table with his coffee, the way Harold would have sat. That afternoon, we drove into Millbrook, to Margaret Kowalski's office. Margaret was 60 years old. She had practiced law on Main Street for 30 years. She wore drugstore reading glasses on a chain. Her office had a framed Kansas Wheat Festival poster from 1986 above her filing cabinet. She had been Harold's lawyer since 1979. She had been my lawyer since the morning after his funeral. I sat down across from her desk. Wade sat next to me. I placed the brown envelope on the desk. I placed the folder from the safe next to it. I said, "Margaret, I'm ready." She put on her reading glasses. She read. She read the letter first. She did not say anything. She read it twice. Then she read the water rights folder. She read it slowly. She made notes on a yellow pad. After 30 minutes, she took off her glasses. She said, "Evelyn, I want to be straight with you. Senior irrigation rights of this priority attached to 340 acres. During a drought of this severity, there is no exact number, but interested parties exist. I can name 3 off the top of my head." She tapped her pen on the pad. "My best estimate, $2.5 to $3 million. Possibly more if the right buyer surfaces, but we should not negotiate the first offer." She looked at me. "Are you sure about how you want to handle this?" I said, "I'm sure." "Tell me." I said, "I want to revoke the power of attorney Dwight got me to sign in October. He coerced it. I can prove it. I signed it sloppy on purpose. I have 23 samples of my real signature in a folder at the house. The October signature does not match any of them." Margaret wrote that down. "Second, I want to file a motion to dismiss any guardianship proceeding my daughter Marlene may have started. Dr. Daryl Patterson will testify that no formal diagnosis was ever made and that the letter she has is not a diagnosis but a preliminary observation. Third, I want a new will." Margaret looked up. "Tell me the terms." I told her. I told her. I said, "My grandchildren first. Tyler, Madison, Ethan. Each one gets $200,000, held in trust until they turn 25. Dispersed only for college tuition, vocational training, or a down payment on a first home. Their parents cannot touch the money." Margaret wrote, $600,000 into the Harold Carter Memorial Scholarship Fund, administered by the Millbrook Community Foundation for the children of Stafford County farmers. Renewable, need-based. Margaret wrote, "My son Dwight gets the house Harold and I lived in. He can sell it, he can keep it, he can do what he wants with it. After taxes and repairs, it will net him somewhere around $200,000. That is his inheritance. Period. He gets no portion of the land or the water rights." Margaret wrote, "My daughter Marlene gets $100,000 cash. I do not give her more because I do not trust her husband. The money is in her name only, with language preventing commingling with marital assets. Margaret wrote, "My son Wade gets the shop, the 5 acres he is on, the 340 acres in Stafford County, the water rights, and whatever the water rights sell for, after the trusts and the scholarship and Marlene's 100,000 are funded, he becomes the manager and primary heir of the Carter estate." Margaret stopped writing. She looked up. She said, "Evelyn, are you absolutely certain?" I said, "Yes." She said, "You understand that Dwight will sue?" I said, "I am counting on it. Let him sue. I have the original power of attorney Harold gave me in 2018. I have the medical record showing no formal diagnosis. I have the signature folder. I have the bank trail showing the joint account was never drained, it was reallocated. And I have you." Margaret almost smiled. She said, "You have me." She turned to Wade. She said, "Mr. Carter, has your mother discussed the inheritance with you?" Wade said, "No, ma'am." She said, "Do you want to know?" Wade said, "She just told you. I heard." Margaret blinked. She said, "Your reaction?" Wade said, "Ma'am, my mother is the one making the decision. It is not my place to react. If she asks me what I want, I will tell her. Until then, I sit and I listen." Margaret looked at me. She said, "Evelyn, he sounds like Harold." I said, "He is. He always was. I just couldn't see it." It took 3 weeks. 3 weeks to draft the documents. 3 weeks for Margaret to file the revocation of the October power of attorney. 3 weeks for the new will to be signed and witnessed. 3 weeks for Margaret to send certified letters to Dwight and Marlene, asking them to come to a family meeting at the Carter farmhouse on the 28th of March at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. I had moved back to the farmhouse by then. Wade had helped me move. He had stayed in the house for 2 weeks while we got the furnace working again. Then he had gone back to the trailer. It was important that I be in my own house when they came. Not Wade's trailer. Not Sunset Pines. My own house. The white 2-story farmhouse Harold had built in 1978. Wade was in the shop when they arrived. He had told me he would not come into the house. "This is between you and them, Mom. Not me." I had said, "Stay in the shop. If I need you, I will come get you." He had nodded. He had walked out. Dwight's Lexus pulled into the driveway at 2:03. Marlene was in the passenger seat. They had driven together from Wichita. Marlene had taken the train down from Topeka the night before. They came up onto the porch. Marlene tried to hug me at the door. I stepped back. I said, "Come inside. Sit down. We have things to discuss." I walked them into the living room. I had set out coffee on the table. I had set out 3 things next to the coffee. 1, a copy of Harold's letter. 2, the folder from the safe. 3, a small handheld voice recorder. Margaret had given it to me, in case they say something later that they want to deny. The recorder was on. I did not tell them. They sat down. Marlene was wearing sunglasses inside the house again. Dwight had a folder of his own. I could see it sticking out of his briefcase. He was here to negotiate. He thought he was in the strong position. He was about to discover that he was not. I sat down across from them. I poured myself coffee. I did not pour them any. I said, "I am not going to waste either of your time. So, I am going to be plain." I looked at Dwight first. I said, "I do not have dementia. I never did. I have been pretending since 2 weeks after your father's funeral. I started pretending the day after I heard what the 2 of you said in the kitchen at the reception about Wade not getting a share, about selling the house, about putting me in assisted living." Marlene took her sunglasses off. Her mouth opened. I kept going. "The power of attorney I signed in October is void. My lawyer, Margaret Kowalski, filed the revocation 3 weeks ago. The signature on it does not match any signature of mine in any document I have signed in the last 50 years. I signed it sloppy on purpose. I have 23 samples of my real signature to prove it. Dwight, Mom." I held up my hand. "I am not finished, Dwight." I turned to Marlene. "Marlene, your lawyer in Topeka, Philip Reyes. Margaret called him last week. He has withdrawn the guardianship petition. He withdrew it without your authorization because Darrell Patterson sent him a sworn affidavit stating that no diagnosis of dementia was ever made, that the letter you have on his letterhead is a preliminary note, not a clinical finding, and that I am of sound mind and capable of managing my own affairs. Marlene started to cry. Il est here. I picked up the folder. I said, "Your father did not burn through our money. He invested it. From 2009 to 2022, he bought 340 acres of farmland in Stafford County, with senior irrigation water rights attached. During the worst drought in this state in 40 years, the current estimated value is between $2.5 and $3 million. Dwight's mouth opened. He started to speak. He closed it. He started again. He said, "Mom, we can divide that fairly. The three of us, we can." I said, "Dwight, I am going to tell you what is happening to that money, and it is not a discussion, it is an announcement. You can leave at any time. The door is behind you." He sat back. He did not leave. I said, "Your children, Tyler and Madison and Ethan, each received $200,000 in trust for education and a first home. 3 trusts, $600,000 total. You and Marlene do not control the trusts. The Millbrook Community Foundation does. $600,000 goes to the Harold Carter Memorial Scholarship Fund for Stafford County farm children, renewable, need-based. Marlene receives $100,000 cash. In your name only. Brad does not have access." Marlene started crying harder. "Dwight, you receive this house, title, free and clear, after I die. You may sell it or keep it. You may do what you wish with it. Net value after costs is approximately $200,000. I paused. I looked at both of them. I said, "The shop. The 5 acres Wade lives on. The 340 acres in Stafford County. The water rights. The Harold Carter Farm Holdings account. All of it goes to Wade. He becomes the manager of the estate. After my death, he is the primary heir." Dwight stood up. His face was red. He said, "That is not legal. That is not fair. Wade is..." I stood up too. I had not stood up to my children in 15 years. I stood up now. I am 5'5". Ifiltela. I said, "Dwight, your brother quit drinking in November 2017. He paid off $18,000 in debt in 6 years, by himself, working as a tractor mechanic. He visited me at Sunset Pines every Sunday for 6 weeks while I was there. He waited 45 minutes in the lobby every time. He brought a Honeycrisp apple every time. He left without seeing me every time, because I told the nurses to send him away, because I still did not believe him, because I was still my own kind of fool." I took a breath. "You visited once, 15 minutes, to bring me papers to sign. Marlene visited twice. 43 minutes total, long enough to post pictures. When I walked out of that facility at 3 in the morning in 24-degree weather, the only one of you who came looking was Wade. Dwight, you turned your phone face down. Marlene, you went back to sleep. Wade found me at a bus station in his father's coat. He drove me to a 600-square-foot trailer. He had clean sheets on the bed. He had clean sheets on the bed that had been ready for 3 weeks. Because somehow he knew I would come. That is who gets the larger share. Not because he is the poorest, because he is the one who came back without being called." Monina wiped her face. She said, and her voice was very small, "Mama, can I call you? Sometimes. After this." I looked at her, my only daughter, the little girl who had won the summer reading contest 3 years running. The little girl who used to sit on the kitchen floor while I rolled out pie crust and read to me from her library book. The middle-aged woman who had hired a lawyer to declare her mother legally incompetent. Both of those people were the same person. I said, "You can call, Marlene. I will answer. But you will not post about it. You will not photograph me. You will not show me to your friends online. If you call me as a daughter, not as content." Marlene nodded. She said, "Okay." She said, "I'm sorry, Mama." I said, I know you are. Dwight picked up his briefcase. He walked out. He did not say goodbye. He drove away in the Lexus. He would not call me for 11 months. When he finally did call, in February the following year, he would say only, "Mom, Madison made the honor roll." I would say, "That's wonderful, son." He would say, "I just thought you'd want to know." He would hang up. He would call once a month after that. Short calls, but calls. It would take him a long time, but he would find his way back to a sliver of being my son. It would not be the relationship I had wanted with my oldest, but it would be the one I had. May 2025. A year and a half after Harold's funeral, spring came to Kansas the way it sometimes does, gentle and on time. The rain came in March instead of June. The wheat was green. The fields had life again. I sat on the porch of the farmhouse. Wade was on a tractor in the back field. He had planted alfalfa for the 12 cattle he had bought in January. The cattle were grazing along the fence line. Wade had taken the inheritance. He had not refused it. He had been clear with me. "Mom, if you give it to me, I will take it, but I am not going to spend it on Alexis." He had paid off the property taxes on all 9 parcels. He had bought the 12 cattle. He had given Earl Henderson $30,000. Earl had used most of it to install a new pump in his irrigation well and to repair his house. Earl had cried. Wade had hired a young man named Cole. Cole was 24. Cole had just gotten out of jail for a DUI. Wade had given him a second chance the way Harold had once given Wade a second chance, only earlier, only without the silence. The rest of the inheritance Wade had put in a savings account. He had said, "Mom, this money is not mine. It is Dad's. I am holding it for the family, for the next generation, for whoever needs it next." He had said it without ceremony. He had said it the way Harold would have said it. I held Harold's letter in my hand. The paper was soft. The folds were worn. I had read it many times. I did not need to read it again. I just held it. I looked out at the field. I watched Wade. I said quietly, "To Harold, to no one, you old fool. We were both wrong. Maybe the only thing we did right was him." The screen door creaked. Wade had come up from the field. He had washed his hands at the outside spigot. He climbed the porch steps. He sat down in the wicker chair beside me. Boomer came up onto the porch and lay down between us. We did not speak for a long time. Then Wade said, "Mom, I'm cooking tonight. What do you want?" I said, "Beef stew." He said, "Beef stew again?" I said, "I like the way you make it." He smiled, small. He got up. He went into the house. I sat on the porch in the wicker chair. I watched the late afternoon light move across the wheat. I thought about the woman who had stood in a hallway 18 months before with an empty glass in her hand, listening to her own children sell her off like a piece of furniture. That woman had been right about one thing. She had been right that the test would tell her the truth. It had told her. The truth was that one of her 3 children was still her child. The truth was that she had spent 30 years calling that child a disappointment. The truth was that the disappointment had become the man who fed her, who covered her with his coat at a bus station in November, who carried her father's secret around his neck for 6 years and never once opened it without permission. The truth was that her husband had known. The truth was that her husband had been a fool too. The truth was that fools could love. The truth was that love could come back from very far away. It would just be quieter than it had been before. It would be quieter for the rest of her life. It would be quiet at the kitchen table at supper time. It would be quiet on the porch in the wicker chair in the spring evening. It would be quiet enough for her to hear it. I closed my eyes. The screen door opened. I smelled beef and onions. My son said, "Mom, come in. It's ready." I opened my eyes. I stood up. I went inside.